L'homme existe-t-il depuis seulement 25 millions d'années? Descend-il vraiment du singe? Michael Cremo, chercheur en histoire et en philosophie des sciences, membre de l'History of Science Society et de l'American Anthropological Association, auteur du livre L'histoire secrète de l'espèce humaine ainsi que de plusieurs autres ouvrages et articles, nous livre ici les failles de l'archéologie officielle, et ceci à l'aide des témoignages même des plus grands archéologues de notre temps. Il nous révèle des preuves jusqu'alors tenues au secret, démontrant ainsi l'antériorité de l'existence humaine sur Terre, tout en détruisant les hypothèses de la théorie de l'évolution. Filmée à l'Université de Concordia, cette conférence choc sera bientôt disponible en DVD, en français et en anglais.
I'd like to thank the Vedic Cultural Society for the invitation to speak to you tonight about my book, Forbidden Archeology, which gives a Vedic perspective on human origins and antiquity. So, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself as a researcher in history and philosophy of science for the Bhaktivedanta Institute. And that is the science studies branch of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The purpose of the Institute is to study concepts of modern science in light of India's timeless Vedic wisdom. So the talk I'm going to give tonight is based on talks that I've given at the Royal Institution in London, the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow, and other scientific institutions, conferences, and universities throughout the world. My research into human origins and antiquity is guided by my studies in the ancient Sanskrit writings of India. And these writings tell us that human civilizations have come and gone on this planet for vast periods of cyclical time. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about this Vedic concept of cyclical time, you could consult this paper, which I presented at the World Archaeological Congress, and it was later published in a peer-reviewed conference proceedings volume. The basic unit of Vedic cyclical time is called the day of Brahma, or the Kalpa. This day of Brahma lasts for 4,320,000,000 years. It's followed by a night of Brahma, which also lasts for 4,320,000,000 years. And the days follow the nights endlessly in succession. And during the days of Brahma, life, including human life, is manifest in the universe, and during the nights, life is dormant. Now, if we carefully study the Vedic cosmological calendar, we'll see that the current day of Brahma, the one we're in right now, began about 2 billion years ago. So a Vedic archaeologist might expect to find evidence for a human presence going back almost 2 billion years. Now, the ancient Vedic writings also speak of ape men. The idea of ape men wasn't invented by European scientists of the 19th century. Long before that, the authors of these ancient Sanskrit writings were speaking of such things. But they also tell us that alongside these ape men existed human beings like us. So the basic picture that you get is one of coexistence, not evolution. And the period of coexistence goes very, very, very far back in time. Of course, these ideas are somewhat different from the ideas about human origins and antiquity that we get from Charles Darwin and his modern followers. Actually, a friend of mine from India told me recently, said, Michael, maybe you're a reincarnation of Charles Darwin. You've had to come back to correct your mistake. So I don't know if I can do it in one lifetime. It may take me a few hundred or so, but maybe you can help me out a little bit. So, what do the Darwinists tell us about human origins? Well, first of all, they say that life began on Earth between 2 and 3 billion years ago. Some scientists say they can detect chemical signs of life going back about 3 billion years. But the oldest undisputed fossil evidence for life that paleontologists now have, fossils of undisputed single-celled creatures, go back about 2 billion years, which is, interestingly enough, the beginning of the day of Brahma. Then they say the first primates, the first apes and monkeys, came into existence about 40 million years ago. Then they say the first hominids, the first ape men, came into existence about 6 million years ago. And finally they say that humans of our type, anatomically modern humans, came into existence about 100,000 years ago. At least that's the age of the oldest undisputed fossil evidence for anatomically modern humans in terms of what modern archaeologists think is true. And they say all of the physical evidence supports this evolutionary picture of human origins with human beings like us coming into existence between 100 or 150,000 years ago, something like that. But when I did 8 years of research into the entire history of archaeology, I found something quite different. I found that over the past 150 years, archaeologists have discovered huge amounts of evidence showing that humans like us have existed throughout this entire period of time, going all the way back to the very beginning of the history of life on Earth. This evidence takes the form of anatomically modern human skeletal remains, anatomically modern human footprints, and human artifacts of various kinds. I've documented this evidence in this book, Forbidden Archaeology, co-authored with my co-author, Richard Thompson. It's a 900-page book, basically aimed at the scientific world. The book is also available in a shorter, popular edition, which is also available in French. It's been published in French in Europe by the publisher Rocher, so you could get it on, if you like French, if you prefer French as your primary language. It's available on the French Amazon.com. Now, this evidence for extreme human antiquity, which contradicts the current theories, is not very well known, both within the scientific world and to the public at large, because of what I call a process of knowledge filtration that operates in the world of science. We can call this blue box here the knowledge filter, and it represents the current consensus on human origins. And reports of evidence that conform to this consensus will pass through this social and intellectual filter very easily, which means students will read about this evidence in their textbooks. People will hear scientists speaking about it on television. If they go to the local museum of natural history, they'll see the artifacts and bones on display. But if we have reports that radically contradict this current consensus, they tend to be filtered out of the discussion, which means we don't read about this evidence in our textbooks, we don't hear scientists speaking very much about it, and if we go to the museum, we won't see the artifacts or bones on display, although they may be there somewhere in the museum collection. And I'm not talking here about some satanic conspiracy theory. It's a very well-known, established fact among historians, philosophers, and sociologists of science that theory determines how evidence is treated. And what I've simply done is demonstrate how that process operates in archaeology.